this week, matter of fact, I think it was just yesterday, a bunch of us in the Turbo community found out that the fucking one of the, I don't know what you want to call him, like an incredibly important person in our silly little TurboGrafx community had passed away. His name is Garner. He's the main developer and business owner of Mindrec games. Also was one of the main people that contributed and ran something that we called the Turbo List. It's one of those weird things when you don't really keep in contact with somebody, and years go by, and you chime in person randomly throughout Facebook posts or Twitter posts or whatever. You kind of like randomly interact once in a while. And the last time BT and I chatted actually was last August. And I was looking, so I heard the news, and then I was thinking about it like, oh my God, like, what the hell? Like, this is insane. And then the more we conversed about it, a lot of you see Zodwall up in our chat once in a while. You see Rover, who is actually streaming right now. He said he's going to come and raid later on because he only streams until like 9 or 10 o'clock. He, I can't remember what his Twitch handle is, but he should be popping in at some point. And then a few of the other guys, Tim, Electro Hayes, you know these guys from our chats once in a while. We all started kind of talking back and forth, and it's just like, gosh, this is really shitty. We've lost another huge contributor to our little community, and it's like, I started to kind of look back, and I brought up my messenger to see when we chatted last, and it was just in August, and he had just finished developing a game. And it was called Vax, and ironically, Vax, because it was a game he developed during the primary time of COVID when we were all in quarantine and lockdown and stuff. So he made a game called Vax. Get it? Vax. Like, get your vaccination. And it's basically a collection of mini games. Slope Dope, Wave of Thunder, Czar's Legion, I think is what it's called. Yeah, and then the Vax game itself. And they're just fun little mini games, but they're pretty amazing because they play on the TurboGrafx. And then it also includes like a remastered version of Implode. I was hoping to be able to play some of these games tonight on this stream, but I actually don't have a way of running these quite yet. This computer right here does not have a disk drive. Otherwise, I would be able to. And they also play on Turbo CD. I'd need to bring all my stuff in here and get that capture device all set up and stuff. So I didn't quite do that. Anyway, random. I'm going to get these eventually and get to it and play some Mindrec games one night. He wound up developing 4 different games for the TurboGrafx. What 30 years of friendship gets you. Now, this hurts. And it's kind of like one of those things when it's like, okay, like no more of this shit. Like, not for a while, because just a year ago, not even a year ago, not like 9 months ago, we lost, his name was Zach, but his forum handle was Rockabilly Paradise, I think, or something like that, which is a naming spin-off of the name from the Super Air Zonk game that came out on the TurboGrafx called Super Air Zonk Rockabilly Paradise. Anyway, he had passed away in June of last year. And so now this one's... It's crazy. We've actually lost Martin Alessi, who was an editor and reviewer for Electronic Gaming Monthly that I knew personally. He and I worked together a couple times when I was doing my Wednesday night Game Huggers, Game Hump podcasts, which Ring Fit Runner was on a couple times. You may even have interacted with some of these guys. I don't think BT Garner was ever on, but Tim was. Zach was on a couple times. Martin Alessi was on. Ryan, or Ring Fit Runner, was on. When I used to do those Game Humps, the Game Huggers podcasts, we would do those on Wednesday nights. Matter of fact, we did so many episodes of that I could probably start to like archive those or like put them somewhere safe so they don't get lost, because I think there's 140 some odd episodes of those. Anyway, it's just like, man, it sucks. It sucks because those memories and those like stories and the things you can joke about and stuff, it's like you kind of think about those kind of things, and it always hits me in a weird way, because it doesn't necessarily like, this thing is not staying down. Okay, there we go. It doesn't like make me, immediately depressed. It's one of those times when you start to think of a story or think about something silly, um, or something that you'd want to talk about, like, hey, remember that one time when we did this one thing or whatever? And it's like the only other person that would remember it is the person that's gone now. And so it's like that kind of shit really rattles me. And this has been another week like that. And it's just crazy. Again, I wouldn't say I was a super close friend of his. I wouldn't say that at all. It's just sometimes it's just like even acquaintances that have somehow touched you in a certain way that really frickin' rattle you. And his contributions to our little community go forever. Man, he ran something, he was like the main guy who put it together, something called the Turbo List. So this is like after the TurboGrafx had been dead and gone in the US, and it was like 1997 or 98 when Superstar and I graduated high school 100 years ago. Many years ago, he started something called a Turbo List, where you could just put your email on it, and then a chat, like an email chain or whatever, would just go around, and we were constantly talking and back and forth. And like BT would start one with just a review of a couple games, and people would email back and chime in. It was almost like a forum, but before forums were a big thing. Like man, this is when IRC chat was huge, and like email chains like that, were like getting in an email group, were a big deal. And so you could respond back and start your own like email chains and threads with this like email group, and it was just something that went on forever. I think the last time the Turbo List was active was about 10 years ago. 2013, 2014 maybe was the last email that was actually sent to that group. And then after that, everyone finally migrated to like social media, the forums, things like that. But like the Turbo List, I believe there's an archive page where all of those are now archived in forum like post style, but all those emails and all the responses are all archived in like text format. So we have them all, which is really cool. And I was digging through it, and it's like the first, and then I was digging through my old Yahoo email account, and like the first email I got was from BT, and he was like, confirming my email address and stuff. And it's like, yeah, I'd love to be a part of the Turbo List. This sounds fun. It was in 2003. Like that is 20 years ago. There's a lot of big things these 20 years ago, man. This is the beginning of it's crazy, but and it's not a good thing, but it wound up being better because of our friendships got stronger. But like Dorkfather, one of the guys that you see in the chat constantly all the time. 20 years ago, we had a major falling out because this year, like literally this time of the year, 20 years ago, he and I and a few others had started a Sunday night gaming group thing, and we had a major falling out like this spring 20 years ago, which then motivated me to try to open my own game shop, which lasted roughly 6-ish months. But that this fall would be 20 years ago. And it's just like thinking about all that and thinking about joining the Turbo List around that same time and connecting with so many cool people and joining a forum and being like trading games and sharing tips and tricks and stories about gaming and sharing personal stories and all kinds of crazy shit. Like things got heavy, and it's like, man, all those stories and all that stuff. I'm glad it's chronicled. I'm glad that it's somewhere where we can kind of read through it and, laugh about those kind of things again, but it sucks that I can't share those kind of things. So anyway, sorry for starting on such a somber note, but like Vax was the game he just came out with. Oh, the reason why Vax was important to me, there's actually this, I think, might have been the first copy printed, maybe. Well, it was at least the first one he shipped, because the game wasn't due out until September something. And we had our show the first weekend in September on Labor Day weekend, and he sent me 2 copies of it to give away when we did a PC Engine TurboGrafx Mindrec like tournament for like a high score challenge or something like that. And I gave one of these out to a gentleman in Tomahawk, which is just like 20 minutes north of us, and I kept the other one. So this is like literally the first 2 that were shipped were to me of his last game, the latest game. The first game that he did was right after the Turbo List when I joined it. This is from 2004. This is Implode, which is one of those kind of like a same game. If you're familiar with same games, there's a series of same games that came out on like Commodore and Amiga and stuff like that, big in Europe. But like TurboGrafx' same game was Implode, and this came out about 10 years after the Turbo officially closed its doors in the US, which is 94. So this came out in 2004. It's one of those games where like you basically have a whole bunch of colors on the screen, and all you try to do is every color that you click on will disappear. But if it's touching a color of its similar color or the same color, then it'll disappear all of those. I think that Dreamcast had one of the best same games that released for it. And it's actually a mystery secret game that's on the Sega online disc. So in order to go online with the Dreamcast, you had to put a disc in the Dreamcast. And then if you clicked on it, then you could like, you put it in the system, turn it on, whatever. And there was some option menus like go online or go browse the web or whatever. But if you went down to the bottom, there was like the Sega Swirl. Does anybody remember this, or am I crazy here? But it's on that disc. It's called Sega Swirl. And you click on Sega Swirl and boom, it brought up a same game type thing where it's the same idea. It's just all those little swirls from the Sega Dreamcast, the logo. And it was just a whole screen full of swirls, and you just had to like remove them all. So basically the idea is if you look at the giant thing full of colors and you say like 90% of this thing is red, right? So you basically poke little holes into it, get rid of all the green, get rid of the purple, get rid of all the blue, and you leave all the reds. And so that when you finally push that red one, it'll blow up like almost all of the colors on the screen. That's like a same game. So that was his first one in 04. He came out with, wait a second, 04. 2002. This might have been the game that got me into the Turbo list, actually. This is 02, I'm sorry. 04 was Meteor Blaster. This is his second game. This is basically a BT's take on like asteroids. It's an asteroids type game. It's got some cutscenes. It's got boss battles in it. It's actually pretty cool. One really neat thing about all of Mindrec's games is his soundtracks. They're so good. These are all on CD, so they're all Red Book audio, really good music and stuff. And then one of his more recent ones, so then he did Meteor Blaster and Implode in like 04 and 02, so like pretty much 2 years apart from each other, and then took a long break, and then wound up coming out with this in 2014. So he took like a 10-year break, did one in 2014, and then took another 8-year break and did one in 2022 for VAX. So this is Hypernova Blast. This is actually, it's like a take on the Defender style games, but this one, I'm not familiar with Amiga games. Maybe it's Amiga or Coleco. I don't remember which one it is. It's some computer type game, but this one, maybe it's just called Hypernova. I'm not sure, but it's kind of like Defender, except for in this one, you are collecting things while you're going around and shooting things, and you can kind of go back and forth. Like you can change directions with your ship. I know I'm going like whatever. I don't know. It's pretty good though. It's pretty easy. I think this is of all of Mindrec's games, this is the only one I've ever beaten. So anyway, I was thinking it'd be really cool to do a game night of these games. So I'm working on ripping these to computer files, and then I'll play them on an emulator or something, so it's a little easier to play. But yeah, really good games. Fucking brilliant guy. Who's a big enough fan of a game console to go and develop your own games for it? It's like just brilliant. So I just want to start with that, just a note to talk about something that's going on in our gaming community, because I couldn't just go and not say anything about it. We found out about it Wednesday morning. I think there was somebody that posted about it, and then we started chatting about it, and it's kind of like taken over everything that we've been talking about lately, just to talk about gaming and stuff. And a few of us are going to try to get together at MGC next month, because at the end of March is the Midwest Gaming Classic in Milwaukee. I will have these and I might have one station set up exclusively for Mindrec games all weekend, because they're super easy, pick up and play, fun games, nothing too involving. Sit down for a little bit, blast some aliens away, and then go off and do whatever you need to do. But good news about MGC. Things are going really well. Planning for that show is going really well. I'm bringing, I think, 14 game systems for the MGC Museum, which shouldn't be very difficult to set up. Once I get my station set up, I'm going to go to the Guys, Games, and Beer room. They've got their own exclusive room. Matter of fact, their room is starting Thursday night. Like their room is actually starting Thursday night. MGC itself on Friday doesn't technically start until Friday evening, like at 5 or something like that. Their Friday's a little different, but that convention's crazy all in general because once it starts, it pretty much never stops. I think most of the rooms close around 1 or 2 in the morning, and then everything opens up at like 7 or 8 in the morning again. But like, there's always private parties and shit like that going on too. But like, the guys' games and beer room is actually opening Thursday, and they're going to be open all day Friday during the day, because there's another game convention or a convention of science fiction convention, or maybe it's tech nerd convention called CypherCon, that is going to be running on Thursday and Friday. So when I get there, I believe I'll be setting up the TurboFest stuff in the guys' games and beer room before I even set up for MGC. I think. I guess I gotta confirm that with everybody first. But I'm planning on I'm bringing 3 to 5 systems for the guys' game and beer room, which is a whole. It's like a part of MGC. You can't get into MGC. You can't get into that room without a badge for MGC. So it's a part of the show, but it also runs on its own rules. Like they've got a whole slew of different things that are going on there, and so they told me that they would love to have TurboFest be a part of it. I think their vibe works really well with what we did, where it's just game setup. People come in and hang out and play games for whatever length of time they want to do, hang out and play whatever they want to play, and bullshit about gaming. And that's the cool thing. But the guys' gaming and beer, their room is kind of separated up into a lot of different things. The room is massive, by the way, but they do some pretty neat work with not cubicles, but like separating things off into certain locations. And so the TurboFest room, from what I understand, is going to be part of like a game museum, a mini game museum, maybe over like 15 systems that they set up in there, which doesn't sound small. I mean, 15 TVs, but like I'll be like 1/3 of it or 1/4 of it or whatever, with like 3 systems at least, but up to 5 if depending on what they tell me, like a couple weeks beforehand when we're planning it, literally like a month from now. But like once we get all that set up in there and stuff, then I just let it go. And there's people in there running it, and they'll be taking care of things and watching it and stuff. So, my primary focus, of course, is always the game museum at MGC. I do a ton of work in there and stuff, and I know I'm rambling now. I'm just rambling. I've been talking for like 20 minutes now. Holy crap! But all things considered, brother, it should be a blast. And the TurboFest being back again, and being a part of another group of people again is going to be awesome. Yeah, right, exactly. At EverCon we had 107 game systems set up. MGC as a whole will have 200 some odd systems set up, so it's way bigger. But being one of the nice part about MGC setup is that one of the organizers, so it's myself, a guy named Jeff, and a guy named Matt. Those are the 3 people that organize stuff for the museum. Yes, 200 some odd game systems, which is insane. But MGC themselves has, I think, 100 systems that they keep in storage that MGC owns themselves. All that we have to do is set them up, which is all a lot of work for sure. But I don't bring them. I don't have to bring anything. I'm literally just going to pack up the trunk of my car. Like I said, 3 to 5 systems set up for my own area. That's fine. And then probably, like I said, 14 or 15 other game systems. But like, you think of a Wii, it's like in a container this big. You think of like an NES, it's a little bit bigger container. And then I bring 5 or 6 games for each system, and we're set. So instead of 107 systems bringing and all the TVs, I'm only doing like 10 or 15 of that. So anyway, rambling on about that stuff. But like, yeah, MGC is going to be a blast. I feel like it's going to be one of the best years ever, just because and I know Superstar knows about this too. A few years ago, right before COVID hit, MGC had lost a lot of its luster, I would say. And it was like, you should just have a shipping container filled with your systems already set up and just drop it in places for these cons. That's not a bad idea. Seriously, shipping stuff is not a bad idea. It really isn't. It's just, we'll see. We'll see.